Hello, welcome, Blitzies. We're back with an art stream. We're back with an art stream, and I got another character design challenge. So basically, I went to the same character design prompt to build a random character. So what I got is the character type is hunter. The talent is computer coding. Personality is impatient. Hair color is light pink, and eye color is dark magenta. So basically, what the fuck, you piece of fucking shit. Piece of shit. I swear to God. I reset this Android phone multiple fucking times. I think it has some sort of firmware level malware embedded in it. Oh, I even replaced the firmware for it. Hey Blitzy, how are you? Yeah, I replaced the firmware in on the Android phone I got. I did not replace my phone. No, I did not. I still have my iPhone, which is my main one I use for most things. I just have the Android phone to just make sure the streams are doing well on multiple platforms. So yeah. Yeah, I'm doing well. Right now we have another character design challenge. And for anyone who's just joining, I went to the same character prompt and we're gonna be building a new character, basically. What I got is basically character type is gonna be hunter. They're skilled in computer coding. Their personality is impatient. They're gonna have like I say they're gonna be more of a pastel-y aesthetic to it, and they can summon mythical creatures. So it's basically a D&D developer we're gonna be making. We're gonna be making a grandmaster. All right. Let's watch a YouTube video. I was in the middle of watching this, so like we're gonna continue watching this. So it is basically circus disasters.
Wallace circus train. On June 22nd, 1918, one of the deadliest disasters in circus history unfolded near Hammond, Indiana. The Hagenbeck-Wallace circus train had stopped on the main track due to an overheated axle box. Most of the 400 performers and workers were asleep in the wooden sleeping cars, exhausted from the previous day's performances. It was approximately 4 o'clock a.m., and the train's warning flares burned brightly in the pre-dawn darkness. Behind them, an empty military troop train was approaching at high speed. Its engineer, Alonzo Sargent, had fallen asleep at the throttle after taking medication. intonation. He missed multiple warning signals along the tracks. The flares marking the stopped circus train went unnoticed in his unconscious state. Moving at nearly 35 miles per hour, the locomotive plowed directly into the rear sleeping cars of the circus train. The impact was devastating. The wooden circus cars immediately splintered like matchboxes. Bodies were thrown from bunks as the structure collapsed around them. But the true horror came seconds later when the kerosene lamps used to light the cars ignited the wooden debris. Within moments, the wreckage was engulfed in flames. Many victims, already injured from the impact, found themselves trapped in the burning wreckage. The fire spread with terrifying speed. Those who survived the initial collision faced an even more horrific death as flames consumed the train. Survivors later described hearing the screams of their colleagues as they struggled to escape the inferno. Some managed to crawl through windows or gaps in the wreckage, while others remained pinned beneath debris as the fire reached them. Rescuers arrived quickly, but could do little against the intensity of the blaze. By morning, 86 circus performers and workers had perished. Most bodies were burned beyond recognition, their features completely obliterated by the flames. The intensity of the fire had melted metal and fused bones together. Lillian 𝙂𝙬𝙖𝙀𝙬. On February 13, 1931, the
Ooh, nice. I wish you good luck with that.
Copenhagen Circus in Denmark hosted a performance by Lillian 𝙂𝙬𝙖𝙀𝙬, widely regarded as the greatest aerialist of her generation. Standing just 4'9" tall but possessing extraordinary strength, the 39-year-old circus star had become famous for her signature one-arm planches, a move where she would swing her body over her shoulder repeatedly while hanging by one hand from a Roman ring. That winter evening, 𝙂𝙬𝙖𝙀𝙬 ascended to her apparatus suspended 40 feet above the ground. She wore no safety net beneath her, a standard choice for elite performers of that era who believed nets diminished the dramatic effect of their acts. The audience watched in awe as she began her routine, executing movements with the precision.
Also, since it's spooky month, we're gonna make out this next piece a little bit spooky
And grace that had made her the highest paid circus performer in the world. As she transitioned into her famous planches, something catastrophic happened. The metal swivel connecting her rope to the rigging suddenly snapped. The sound was barely audible over the music, but the effect was immediate and devastating. 𝙂𝙬𝙀𝙬 plummeted toward the ground, her small body twisting in the air during the 40-foot fall. She struck the ground with terrible force. The impact fractured her spine and caused severe internal injuries, but did not kill her instantly. Medical staff rushed to her side as the audience sat in stunned silence. She was conscious, in excruciating pain, and struggling to breathe as her damaged lungs filled with fluid. Doctors later explained that the fall had ruptured blood vessels throughout her body, causing massive internal bleeding. For 2 days, 𝙂𝙬𝙀𝙀 fought for her life in a Copenhagen hospital. Her body, which had defied gravity thousands of times before, could not overcome the trauma. Her breathing became increasingly labored as pneumonia developed in her damaged lungs. On February 15th, surrounded by circus colleagues, Lillian 𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀 died from complications of her injuries, the flying 𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀. On January 30th, 1962, the State Fair Coliseum in Detroit was packed with spectators, eager to witness the flying 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀 perform their legendary 7-person pyramid. The 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀 family had perfected this death-defying act over generations, creating a human structure 35 feet above the ground with no safety net below. The top tier consisted of Carl 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀's son-in-law Richard 𝙂𝙂𝙀, his nephew Dieter Schepp, and Carl's adopted son Mario. As the lights dimmed and spotlights focused on the wire, the family ascended to their position.
Where's the other adopted son named Luigi? Where's the Mari brothers at? Sorry, I had to do that. I had to do that.
With practiced precision, they formed the 3-tier pyramid, an act they had performed flawlessly hundreds of times before. Carl 𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀, the 57-year-old patriarch of the family, anchored the formation in the rear. Then, without warning, Dieter Schepp at the front of the formation lost his balance. His body tensed as he tried to correct, but the slight shift rippled through the connected performers. Within seconds, the precision of the pyramid disintegrated as bodies began to fall. The crowd gasped collectively as the formation collapsed. Richard 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀 and Dieter Schepp plummeted directly to the ground. The impact was devastating. Both men died instantly upon impact, their necks broken and internal organs ruptured from the force. Another family member, Carl's son-in-law, Janne Schepp, survived the initial fall but suffered catastrophic spinal injuries that left him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Carl 𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀 himself clung to the wire as the pyramid collapsed around him. In a desperate attempt to save others, he reached out to grab falling family members but could not prevent the tragedy unfolding beneath him. The sound of bodies striking the ground echoed throughout the arena, followed by screams from the audience. Medical personnel rushed to the fallen performers, but for 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀 and Dieter Schepp, no one.
Honestly, for some reason I don't design a modern tank. I don't really know why. Honestly, just go with the flow, with your the creative flow. Just trust the process, no matter how bizarre it is.
intervention could reverse the fatal damage caused by their 35-foot fall onto the hard Coliseum floor. Otto Klein. On April 14, 1915, the Barnum and Bailey Circus was performing at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Otto Klein, a 28-year-old equestrian star billed as the world's most daring rough rider, was the headline act that evening. His specialty was a dangerous vaulting technique where he would leap onto and over galloping horses, performing aerial somersaults before landing perfectly on the animal's back. The packed arena buzzed with anticipation as Klein entered the ring for his signature finale. He was known for his impeccable timing and seemingly effortless control. As his white horse galloped around the circular track at full speed, Klein prepared for his most challenging maneuver, a forward flip over the horse, requiring him to release and recapture the pommel of the saddle mid-air. As the horse rounded the far curve of the ring, Klein launched himself upward with characteristic confidence. His body rotated forward through the air, but something was wrong. His timing, always perfect in hundreds of previous performances, was slightly off. His fingers grazed, but failed to secure a firm grip on the pommel as he descended. Instead of landing on the horse's back, Klein's body continued its arc directly into the ring's barrier wall. The impact was violent and direct. His skull struck the hard edge of the wall with tremendous force. Witnesses described the sickening sound of bone meeting solid surface as Klein's body crumpled to the ground. Blood immediately began pooling around his head as he lay motionless in the sawdust. Medical attendants rushed into the ring while the horse continued circling, now riderless. Klein was still breathing, but the fracture to his skull had caused catastrophic brain damage. His body twitched involuntarily as internal bleeding compressed vital brain tissue. He was rushed to Bellevue Hospital, where doctors determined his injury was unsurvivable. Otto Klein died 3 hours later without regaining consciousness. The precise skill that had made him famous ultimately betrayed by a fraction of a second's mistiming. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.
Subscribe to these nuts. Sorry. Don't tell me that I awakened something in you.
These companies all try. These companies.
Alright, there we go. Honestly, I should search for poses. You may call me a poser for that.
All tried to replace humans. Tesla, Klarna, IBM, Duolingo, and countless more. They were overconfident in replacing humans, but now most are quietly backpedaling. Why are companies so obsessed with replacing humans, and why haven't all our jobs been taken by now? Strangest of all, one of the biggest disasters was before the AI boom even began. For our first example, we need to look no further than Elon Musk in 2017. This wasn't AI like large language models, but the entire experiment follows a very similar path. He had a grand vision for a machine that builds the machine, a Tesla factory with as few human workers as possible. But wait, isn't that most car factories? Robots can move much more efficiently than humans, and almost every car factory already uses some robotics. they've also been like this for years, if not decades, even by 2017. But this was different. Most automotive factories are a mix of robots and humans, but Elon Musk had become obsessed with efficiency and, more importantly, automation. The colossal factory for the Model 3 would be the most robotics-driven assembly line on the planet, almost entirely robotics. Also, the Model 3 was just launching and expected to be Tesla's big break, a 230-mile range.
I wonder, should we go for more of a... I mean, you're already drawing with one hand anyway, so might as well. I'm sorry, I had to. I had to. I wonder, I'm gonna look for who has the ability to... I want to go with more like a Viking slash... Lol. Yeah. I wonder. Now I'm thinking, should I may want to go with a uh since it can be computer coding and it can be some creatures. We might as well be making an amazing digital circus OC if we're gonna be going with that for this art challenge. So I'm probably gonna go with a cyberpunky Viking emo kid programmer. Alright. I'm even looking at a few references.
Range $35,000 EV sedan for middle-class consumers. The big bet the company project, but being more mass-produced means making a lot of cars. Musk wanted this car's manufacturing to be efficient, fast, and constant. The goal was 5,000 Model 3s a week by the end of 2017. Yet, that goalpost quickly began to move. The goal soon dropped to 2,500, then 2,000. Production just wasn't working. Cars couldn't get out the door. Why? Tesla had created all kinds of bottlenecks. One was the systems integration subcontractor, aka the machine that makes batteries. This wasn't working as intended, and Tesla had to rewrite the entire control software from scratch. But that was just the beginning. Some machines would break down 2 times a day, while the machine that lifted wheel well liners onto the production line would break down 4 times a week. The robot...
Yeah, it's gonna be something and a half. Alright, let's see here. Inserting the front seat broke down as much as 5 times in a single day. Robotics in most automotive factories often go over a month between breakdowns. Apparently, Tesla did not perform a lot of preventative maintenance on machines, and with how many machines there were, it all compounded. The production line turned into a gigantic, complicated bottleneck, and this was made all the worse by the cars themselves. Teslas aren't known for being simple cars, and with how much new technology Tesla stuck in the Model 3, it pushed the robotics from bad to disastrous. We put too much technology into the Model 3 all at once. This should have been staged, he said. As 2018 rolled in, Tesla was far behind the targets, but it gets even worse. In 2018, Tesla still hadn't broken even in the past 9 years. Bankruptcy was a real looming threat at this stage. When asked how close Tesla was to going under, Elon said, "Closest we got was about a month."
The Model 3 ramp was extreme stress and pain for a long time, from mid-2017 to mid-2019, production and logistics hell. It was all a disaster. The machine that builds the machine was going down, and it was dragging Tesla with it. Elon's bet was on the verge of destroying his entire business. So, what did they do? They brought back humans. Elon scrapped pretty much the entire thing. Even with most of the robotics gone, they still had cars to make, lots of them. So Tesla quickly built a temporary production line called the Sprung Project. A gigantic tent-like assembly line was raised in a parking lot, and it was jam-packed with people, not robots, all assembling the Model 3 where the automation failed.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many
I
hours?
was working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly,
Nice.
body shop.
And the unthinkable happened, or maybe the very thinkable. Production accelerated. At long last, Tesla managed to get Model 3s out the door at a good pace. They escaped bankruptcy.
Okay, I got quite a few good art references to use as a base for this.
And the solution wasn't more automation. To be fair, Musk was very open about the failure. He tweeted, "Excessive automation at Tesla was a mistake. To be precise, my mistake. Humans are underrated." This was before the AI boom, but it shows us something crucial about the shortcomings of automation and where exactly things can fall apart. Yet, very soon, thousands of companies would attempt the same idea, but not only replacing manual labor, but also intellectual labor.
Why's my brother staring at me a little? Wait, and don't have a brother. Uh-oh, spaghetti-o. I kind of need a spooky month aesthetic as well. What if... I don't know much. But I kind of want to make a cyberpunk Viking aesthetic, but for the spooky aspect of it, maybe we could use like a fox guy mask, like a digital fox guy mask.
ChatGPT. Maybe you've heard of it. If you haven't, then get ready, because this promises to be the viral sensation that could completely reset how we do things.
As GPT and soon other LLMs like Meta AI, Claude, Gemini, and Grok were rolling out, many people of all trades felt a sinking feeling in their stomach. Be it software, art, music, writing, customer support, or many more, they thought, will this replace my job? And unfortunately, their fears were soon realized. Business leaders were soon convinced that AI was finally here, and it was time for humans to go. Many CEOs began speaking of a new AI-first future. The goal, more efficiency, more revenue, and most of all, lower cost. One of the most bold was the buy now, pay later giant, Klarna. Its CEO, Sebastian, was amazed by GPT and said he wanted Klarna to be OpenAI's favorite guinea pig. I think you can see where this is going. In 2023, Klarna enacted a hiring freeze and began laying off staff in droves. Staff dropped from 5,000 down to 3,800, then down to 2,000. Staff were growing more concerned, But Sebastian had a very different tune. He bragged that AI chatbots were handling 2/3 of customer service chats within the
And what happens when a CEO is impulsive and thinks some bullshit is the future? They end up nearly destroying their business, if not actually destroying their business.
first month, and that AI replaced 700 customer service agents. He also called the
I'm going to. Alright, sleep well, matinee.
massive staff cuts natural attrition. In his words, AI can already do all of the jobs that we as humans do. It's just a question of how we apply it and use it. But Klarna is just the tip of the iceberg.
Alright. File. Okay, we're gonna use the Viking picture I found for the base of it. Okay, so that's okay, that's on. Alright. Here we go. Alright.
The Australian telecom company Telstra cut 2,800 workers in an AI overhaul. The e-commerce giant Shopify had a similar tone. Leadership announced that all teams wanting to onboard more staff or resources first had to show why they cannot get what they want done using AI. While these companies were making massive cuts, something else was happening in the background, which would cause problems. But for now, many CEOs were proclaiming this new revolution, including Mika Kaufman, CEO of Fiverr. In a leaked company-wide email, he told staff, "Here's the unpleasant truth. AI is coming for your jobs. Heck, it's coming for my job too. This is a wake-up call." This was after they began overhauling Fiverr to promote AI services and launched an AI marketing campaign. But these examples are nothing compared to the next. IBM. The old tech giant laid off 8,000 staff, all replaced by AI. But these were customer service roles. Many of these were HR roles, and IBM instead implemented Ask HR, a digital HR AI employee. It would reply to queries, perform documentation, and would approve or deny leave. Not only do we have AI reviewing our CVs, but now our time off too. But IBM insisted it was fine because the overall role count was going up, saying it gives you more investment to put into other areas. These announcements and cuts outraged many, as the fears of thousands losing their jobs became a reality. But it wasn't just a big tech. Taco Bell replaced drive-thru staff with an automated AI voice and ordering system and rolled it out to 500 locations in 2023. Though the strangest out of all of these was also the most unexpected. If you don't know Duolingo, it's a gamified language learning app. But this app is big. It's a globally known brand, and not only that, a beloved brand.
Get you there quicker. Language learning is hard, so we made it fun.
This bird is everywhere, and skits, animations, and marketing stunts with Duolingo spawned tens of millions of views and many marketing case studies. Duolingo was doing well, really well, so what happened next came as a surprise. It would be AI first. Co-founder and CEO Louis von Ahn said, "We need to rethink much of how we work. Minor tweaks to systems designed for humans won't get us there." Though he did sign his memo by proclaiming, Duolingo will remain a company that cares deeply about its employees. That didn't extend to contract workers though, who were being replaced by AI. But Duolingo had no idea how drastic the consequences would be. After companies went full steam ahead with AI, the results that came were underwhelming. A study by researchers from MIT found that most new AI integrations don't generate rapid revenue acceleration. In fact, only 5% do, and it's important to note which 5%. Startups led by 19 or 20-year-olds, for example, have seen revenue jumps from 0 to 20 million in a year. It's because they pick one pain point, execute well, and partner smartly with companies who use their tools. Some bigger companies pull it off, but 95% fail at integrating them. Leaders or managers treat them as plug and play, lay off staff and drop in AI. But it doesn't work like that. ChatGPT might be able to adapt to how you work individually, but scaling that for systems and workflows of a giant enterprise? That takes a lot more work, and the report found that companies don't seem to understand how to do that. So, dropping Claude or GPT into a large company can feel slow or clumsy. They need data, pipelines, and training, and employees often don't know how to make use of them. But there's more. A study by OrgView of senior business leaders and executives found that 55% of those who replaced employees with AI regretted it and felt they made the wrong decision. Now we're seeing all of this in the real world. Remember Klarna's massive layoffs and its CEO's bold claims? Well, let's take a look at them now. The company is now hiring again, including those 700 customer service roles. Why? You might be shocked to hear this, but Klarna saw a drop in quality after replacing staff with AI. Sebastian said, as cost unfortunately seems to have been a too predominant evaluation factor when organizing this, what you end up with is having lower quality. Or in layman's terms, we prioritize cost over everything and it didn't work. Surprise, surprise. And they aren't alone in their backpedaling. IBM leaders quickly realized the new Ask HR bot wasn't as robust as they thought and fell apart in the more complicated HR situations. IBM soon rehired many of the staff it laid off. Some of the outcomes, though, were just odd.
Welcome to Taco Bell. What can I get started for you today?
Can I get 18,000 water cups, please?
Okay. What can I do for you?
Another customer ordered a Mountain Dew, only for the AI to repeatedly ask him what drink he wanted. Others had unwanted items added and were even charged twice. After all this, Taco Bell decided to scale back the AI systems a bit. While some are backpedaling due to underwhelming results, others are because of backlash. Duolingo's AI-first policy didn't sit well with users, who saw a decrease in quality and let the app know. I cancelled my subscription after that news. There's at least some content in the English to Spanish course now that's AI generated, and it sucks. We don't want AI. We want real people doing good work. Goodbye, Duo. A 650-day plus streak never felt so meaningless once I saw the news. The CEO quickly rushed into damage control, saying he did not give enough context and that Duo wouldn't lay off any full-time staff. But Duo still appears to be relying on AI regardless. So the question is, how and why did all of this happen? Why didn't AI replace humans? All of the CEOs and leaders seem to be chasing the illusion of the perfect company, and I can't entirely blame them. It's good to try and make your business as efficient and productive as possible, and business leaders often talk about automation and systems, but there's something deeper than all of this. Deeper than just AI bad, humans good, which is fragility. Automation promises efficiency, but quite often it creates fragility. All of these AI integrations and automations that seem like they can replace workers are actually quite fragile. And something that AI definitely can't replace is subscribers. We're trying to cross 1 million subscribers by the end of this year, and we're over 80% there. If you hit subscribe right now, we might just be able to pull it off. A couple of robots malfunctioning bottlenecks the entire Tesla factory, or one customer asking for 18,000 water cups. The weakest link can bring down the entire system or bottleneck the production line. Humans add resilience to companies. In a way, we're shock absorbers. When something goes wrong, we can adapt, change, press in, and ease off. When an HR situation requires nuance, we can provide it. We can jump from one job to another. And we don't crash when someone asks for a lot of water cups. Humans are underrated. It's hard to say if AI will be able to do any and all types of jobs, but there is some hope. The OrgView study also found that 51% of leaders believe reskilling is strategically important in preparing their workforce for AI, and 41% say they have increased their L&D budgets to ensure employees have the right training. Giving employees better tools and training instead of laying them off and dropping AI as plug and play is likely the better way forward. The startup that has felt the brunt of this more than anyone else is Fiverr, whose stock has crashed over 90%. I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
All right.
The industrial.
All right.
The industrial dishwasher incident. At the back of a busy fast food restaurant where the air is thick with steam, fryer smoke, and the nonstop clatter of plates and trays, sat the industrial dishwasher, a hulking metal box designed to blast dishes clean with jets of near-boiling water, conveyor belts, and churning gears. A worker was loading trays into the machine, rushing to keep up with the mountain of dirty dishes piling up. One slip of his arm, and the conveyor pulled him in. Just when you thought having a machine to do the dishes for you was convenient, it decided to clean up the worker too. Inside, superheated jets pummeled him with pressurized water hot enough to peel skin away on contact. The conveyor forced him deeper, where rotating brushes and gears shredded clothing and tore into flesh. Bones snapped as his body was crushed against the mechanical arms meant to scrub trays. Workers nearby heard the screams but couldn't shut it down fast enough as the system wasn't designed for quick stops. By the time the machine was forced open, what remained was horrific. A body mangled almost beyond recognition, skin blistered and slawed off, muscles carved open by steel parts, and blood mixing with the wash water as it drained. The dishwasher had done its job a little too well. The soda machine incident. This next situation takes place during the 2000s inside a fast food restaurant. The air smelled of frying oil, the floors were slick with grease, and the soda fountain hummed endlessly, pumping out gallons of syrupy drinks. Workers moved between fryers, grills, and registers, surrounded by the roar of kitchen chaos. Meanwhile, a slow leak had been dripping beneath the soda machine for days. What nobody realized was that the wires inside were faulty, and the mixture of liquid and electricity turned the floor into a hidden trap. A worker moved in to fix it, mop in hand, and the second his shoe touched the puddle, the current hit. The shock locked his body upright instantly. Muscles seized, jaw clenched, and his arms flailed uncontrollably as electricity surged through every nerve. His coworkers watched, horrified, as he convulsed violently against the machine, slamming into the counter while the smell of scorched flesh filled the air. There was no way to pull him free. Anyone who tried would have been hit with the same charge. For nearly a minute, the current rattled his body until finally it gave out, dropping him lifeless to the sticky, fizzing floor. By the time the power was cut, it was too late. A machine built to serve up endless refills had just served up a fatal jolt, leaving nothing but silence and the sharp sting of burned wires. The grease incident. Inside a fast food kitchen, the air reeked of fried oil, the tile floors were slick underfoot, and behind the counters, machines hissed and clattered nonstop. Workers hustled between fryers, grills, and sinks, trying to keep up with the flood of orders. In the middle of it all sat the grease trap, a recessed pit that collected the boiling runoff from fryers, hidden beneath a metal cover and filled with scalding liquid fat. During the rush, one worker stepped too close. The cover wasn't secured, and with a single misplaced foot, he slipped and dropped straight into the pit. The plunge wasn't far, but it was into hell itself. The moment his body hit the searing grease, the burns were immediate and catastrophic. Skin blistered and peeled in sheets, muscle fibers scorched, and the nerves fried in an instant. He thrashed violently, trying to claw his way back out, but the grease was dense and suffocating. Every breath pulled fumes and droplets into his lungs, where the hot fat burned his airway from the inside. His screams turned into gurgles as the trap swallowed him deeper, coating every inch of him in boiling sludge. Coworkers rushed forward, but there was no safe way to help, not without being cooked alive themselves. By the time the system was shut down, the man had already gone still, floating face down in the pit. His body was swollen, blistered, and blackened, barely recognizable as human. The walk-in freezer incident. In the back of a fast food restaurant, beyond the fryers and grills, stood the walk-in freezer, a metal room colder than winter, lined with stacked boxes of patties, fries, and frozen desserts. Workers went in and out all day, hauling supplies while the heavy door slammed shut behind them. To most, it was just another part of the job, a quick chill before stepping back into the heat of the kitchen. But on this night, the latch didn't click the way it should have. A worker stepped inside, arms full of frozen boxes. When the door swung closed and sealed him in, the freezer roared quietly around him, fans pumping frigid air, the temperature plunging well below zero. He pounded on the steel, shouting for help, but the kitchen had gone quiet. Nobody heard. Minutes stretched into hours, his breath fogged white with each gasp, fingers stiffening as frost formed on his skin. The cold gnawed through his clothes, blistering patches of exposed flesh, turning his lips blue and his body numb. He tried to move to stay warm, but exhaustion set in. The shivering slowed, replaced by sluggish movements and waves of disorientation. By morning, he was slumped against the wall, frozen solid. His skin was molted blue and black from frostbite, his hands locked in rigid claws, his eyes wide but glazed over with ice. When coworkers opened the door, they found him stiff and lifeless among the frozen boxes, his body preserved like inventory. The meat grinder incident. In the kitchen of a fast food restaurant, the meat grinder was one of the most unforgiving machines on site. A heavy steel hopper sat above a rotating screw built to chew through pounds of raw beef and spit out on the other side in a neat pile, ready for patties. Workers dreaded cleaning it because the blades inside didn't care whether it was product or flesh. They shredded everything. One evening, a worker stayed behind to sanitize the grinder after the dinner rush. The machine was supposed to be switched off, but in the chaos of closing time, power still ran to the motor. He leaned in, cloth in hand, reaching into the hopper to scrub the inside. One slip was all it took. His arm slid too far, caught instantly by the screw, and the grinder pulled him down with brutal force. Bones snapped like dry twigs as his arm was crushed and drawn deeper. He screamed, thrashing, but the blades worked faster than anyone could react. His shoulder followed, then his torso, dragged inch by inch into the rotating steel. The machine treated him like another load of meat, feeding his body through with a wet, tearing sound. By the time coworkers reached the switch, it was already too late. What remained on the other side was unrecognizable. Flesh pressed into ribbons, bone fragments mixed with fat, blood spreading across the prep counter like spillage from a broken pipe. The grinder had finished its work before anyone could pull him free. What they found wasn't a man anymore, but something processed, a body dismantled into parts no one could separate from the machine. The deep fryer incident. In 2007, inside a fast food restaurant during the dinner rush, the kitchen was a mess. Oil hissed and bubbled in towering fryers, baskets clattered, timers beeped, and the air was thick with grease heavy enough to cling to your skin. Workers slipped in and out of stations, moving fast to keep up with the orders piling in. One worker, carrying a heavy crate across the slick floor, lost his footing. In an instant, his body lurched forward, and with no time to grab hold of anything, he toppled headfirst into the open vat of boiling oil. The reaction was instant and catastrophic. At over 350 degrees Fahrenheit, the oil cooked him. his face and chest blistered on contact, skin bubbling before peeling away entirely. He flailed desperately, but the weight of the fall drove him deeper into the vat, wedging his body inside like food dropped for frying. Each frantic inhale only dragged superheated vapor into his lungs, scorching his airway and sealing his throat shut. His screams came out as choked gurgles, drowned by the roar of boiling grease. Coworkers rushed forward but recoiled instantly. The splashing oil burned anyone who got too close. By the time the machine was cut off, it was too late. The oil had turned red, bubbling with fragments of flesh. When he was finally pulled free, his upper body was charred black in some places, shredded and peeled in others, cooked through like battered meat. If you've made it this far, you've just sat through some of the most absurd, grisly, and downright miserable ways people have met their end in the world of fast food. That's all I've got for now, so maybe skip the late night fryer cleanup, keep both hands out of the ice cream machine, and for the love of everything greasy, watch your step around the soda fountain.
Yep. Also, not trusting soda fountains if there's a puddle nearby ever again. Or a puddle, since I never really encountered that situation in the first place. But it's good to make note of it. Alright. I kind of like it if I make a like a holographic shield, a hologram shield. I don't know. Kind of like the Halo shield. Shields. Not like the weapon, but like the aesthetic of it.
The tunnel in
Oh, that's neck cracking. Okay. Alright. There we go.
the tunnel incident. In 2012, construction workers in Vietnam were digging a massive hydropower tunnel when the mountain above them decided to cave in. One moment they were hauling rock, the next, a deafening roar swallowed the site as hundreds of tons of earth collapsed in on itself. 6 men were crushed instantly. 12 others were buried alive in the dark, sealed behind walls of rubble thicker than a house. Imagine standing there, covered in dust, with only a helmet lamp flickering while you realize the ceiling is gone and the mountain is now your coffin. Air ran thin, water seeped in, and every groan of shifting rock was a warning that it could all come crashing down again. People think buried alive is a phrase, while these men lived it, scratching at stone with their hands, breathing the last of the oxygen, knowing that rescue was a race against physics. One rescuer later said, "It was like God sneezed and the mountains swallowed them whole." Not exactly the poetic heroism you see in movies. When the survivors were finally pulled out days later, they could barely stand, their bodies wrecked by dehydration and oxygen loss. Their coworkers were carried out in bags. The submarine incident. Because nothing says safest place on Earth quite like being sealed inside a pressurized metal tube hundreds of feet underwater, one naval exercise in the early 2000s turned into a death sentence for everyone aboard. On paper, it was just another drill. Dive, run checks, fire a test weapon, resurface. The kind of routine that doesn't even make the news. Then, the torpedo misfired. A split-second malfunction set off a chain of explosions that tore through the forward compartments. The shockwaves slammed through steel walls, rupturing bulkheads, cooking anyone in their path alive. Flames raged in a place designed to keep fire out, turning the sub into a furnace before the ocean swallowed the heat. Those not killed instantly met something slower and far crueler. The blast gutted power, plunging the remaining decks into pitch-black silence. Air grew toxic with fumes, every breath burning the lungs. With oxygen leaking away and seawater seeping in, men clawed at the bulkheads, their fingernails leaving marks on the steel as they gasped for air that wasn't there. Some convulsed as carbon monoxide overtook them, others simply slumped where they stood, choking in the dark. Above the wreck, rescuers scrambled, but the damage was catastrophic. The submarine was too deep, the hull too mangled, the hours ticking away. By the time divers finally made contact, the ocean had already claimed everyone inside. What had started as a routine display of military power ended as a massive mass grave, sealed tight beneath the waves. A steel coffin filled with burned lungs, broken bodies, and silence. The Halifax incident. This next situation takes place in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Dock workers trudged to the harbor, ships crowded the waterfront, and nobody had the slightest idea they were about to walk straight into history's deadliest workplace disaster. Out in the harbor, two ships collided, one of them carrying a full load of explosives. Turns out mixing ships and explosives is the kind of workplace hazard no training manual covers. The burning vessel smoldered for nearly 20 minutes, sending thick smoke into the sky. People stopped working, gathering to watch, unaware they were staring at a floating bomb with the power to erase a city. Then, at 9:04 a.m., the inevitable happened. The ship detonated with a force so violent it ripped through Halifax like a giant fist. The blast equaled thousands of tons of TNT, flattening buildings, shredding entire blocks, and sending a shockwave strong enough to shatter windows over 50 miles away. Dock workers closest to the site were incinerated instantly, while thousands of others were torn apart by collapsing walls and flying debris. And if that wasn't enough, a wall of water surged inland, drowning survivors in the freezing harbor. The carnage was staggering, with over 1,600 people killed on the spot, 9,000 more left bloodied and broken, and whole neighborhoods reduced to dust. One moment, docks were full of noise and labor. The next, fire, rubble, and bodies. The oil rig incident. In the late 1980s, on a massive platform out in the North Sea, another night shift began like any other. Workers carried out their routines, steel rang with footsteps, machinery roared, and the rigs pulled oil from beneath the ocean. It started with a leak, silent, invisible, and deadly. A single fault in the system transformed the structure into a giant bomb waiting to go off, and then it did. The first explosion tore through the rig like a cannon blast, ripping open corridors and throwing men like ragdolls. Some never even knew what hit them. Others had seconds to realize the nightmare they were trapped in. Flames filled passageways, stairways buckled, and every possible escape turned into a trap. Those who jumped didn't find safety below. The sea itself was on fire, a slick of burning oil that clung to their skin and dragged them down. From a distance, all anyone could see was a floating torch in the dark sea. Beams twisted, walkways collapsed, and men were swallowed by fire or drowned in the black water below. The rig became a steel furnace, every explosion sealing the fate of those still inside. By the time it was over, nearly 200 workers had been erased in a single night, leaving nothing behind but flames, twisted steel, and an oil-slicked grave. The reactor incident. Back in 1986, deep inside a power station meant to showcase the future of energy, a routine test was underway. The plan was as simple as shut things down, run through procedures, and prove the machine could handle it. Just another technical drill for the record books. But instead of a clean shutdown, the system buckled, pressure built, safety protocols failed, and the core blew wide open. The blast was a death sentence of invisible waves. What looked like smoke rising into the night was
You're
actually
making
poison
layers.
spreading through the air, clinging to skin, and sinking deep into lungs. For the workers closest to the blast, the nightmare started immediately. Their skin turned red, blistered, and began peeling away in sheets. Muscles swelled, eyes burned, and every breath felt like inhaling fire. Some staggered away, vomiting, collapsing as their organs literally cooked beneath the surface. Others remained trapped in the wreckage, slowly realizing that nothing around them, walls, tools, even the air, was safe to touch. Radiation consumed them slowly.
Oof.
Hospitals filled with the walking dead. Men who looked fine at first, only to collapse days later as their skin slotched off. Their blood vessels burst and their insides melted into liquid. Each hour stripped them further until faces became unrecognizable and bones pushed through what used to be flesh. By the end, entire neighborhoods were poisoned, whole families erased, and an entire region was left glowing with the cost of a single mistake. The 𝙂𝙚𝙣𝙚 incident. In the early hours of November 5th, 1983, aboard the 𝙂𝙚𝙣𝙚 oil rig, 4 saturation divers were preparing for a routine decompression procedure after a dive. They would be traveling from their diving bell into a decompression chamber where the atmospheric pressure was to very gradually and safely drop from 9 atmospheres back down to 1. Inside the chamber, 2 divers were already in their living quarters, and 2 more were standing directly behind the main door that connected to the diving bell. Just then, when the chamber door opened only partially, the diving bell seal was loosened. Either a mistake, miscommunication, or something else had just opened the pressurized tube directly to the outside air. In an instant, all 9 atmospheres of pressure exploded out through the opening. The diving bell shot out like a cannonball, killing the attendant behind it instantly. But the true nightmare was inside the chamber. All 4 divers were inside when the system explosively decompressed. The pressure dropped so fast, the human body simply couldn't withstand it. The 3 divers furthest away from the door felt a pressure release so great, their blood literally boiled, and they were killed instantly. The diver next to the door wouldn't be so lucky. As the air rushed out from the pressurized tube through the small opening, he was sucked forward and into the opening, where the immense pressure burst open his stomach and emptied his internal organs in the blink of an eye. His innards sprayed across the steel deck like shrapnel, with fragments flying nearly 10 meters into the air. His body was literally torn apart, half inside, half spread around outside. The Tenerife
Jesus
Airport incident.
fuck.
In 1977, which should have been just another busy day at an airport in Spain, turned into a nightmare that no one could have predicted. 2 massive Boeing 747s were taxiing in dense fog, crews focused on their checklists, radio
I remember
chatter filling
this.
the air. It looked like a routine day at the office, but not until the routine went out the window. Visibility was near zero. Pilots followed instructions, controllers tried to coordinate, and everything seemed under control until it wasn't. One plane began its takeoff roll while the other was still on the same runway. There wasn't time for braking, swerving, or miracles. In seconds, the 2 giants collided with a force unimaginable, metal crumpling, fuel igniting instantly. The crash was catastrophic. The fireball engulfed the aircraft and chaos erupted. People trapped inside faced a heat so intense it melted metal and flesh alike. The scene outside was no less horrifying. Wreckage scattered across the tarmac, screams drowned by the roar of flames and collapsing fuselage. Emergency crews rushed in, but there was little anyone could do. By the end of it, 583 people had lost their lives, making it the deadliest accident in aviation history. If you made it this far, you've just seen some of the most insane and grisliest ways work can literally kill you.
Alright. Hello, how are you? Currently doing my third art challenge right now. How you been? Here. Okay. No.
Your step is hell. Across America, there are giant steel mills where men harness fire to create molten iron that powers engines, steel frames, and the pillars that support entire cities. At the Caterpillar Mapleton plant in Illinois, iron is heated to nearly 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,430 degrees Celsius, hotter than lava, enough to instantly obliterate human tissue. The factory floor here is a death zone. One wrong step and you're reduced to ash. So every breath, every movement must be precise, every move. On the 2nd of June, a 39-year-old man entered his 5th shift at his new job. Little did he know, it would also be his last. He was given a seemingly simple task. Take a sample of molten iron for testing. He turned a giant metal wheel, and a stream of red-hot steel poured down from the tank like lava. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal, and the heat was enough to burn anything that dared to come near. He bent down, approaching the edge of the boiling iron stream. Droplets of fire flew everywhere, and just one touch was enough to obliterate his entire face. But this time, he was safe. After taking the sample, he turned and walked away, thinking he had overcome the danger. Then disaster struck, a slip, a momentary loss of balance, and his body fell back into the boiling steel tank. In a terrifying moment, half of his body was swallowed by the orange pit. He struggled, clawed, tried to escape, but it was hopeless. The liquid fire rolled, tearing his flesh in an instant. Just one breath later, the entire half of his body disappeared into the abyss of metal. The witnesses were stunned. No one could believe what they saw. Part of his body was still on the steel floor, while the other had been consumed by the inferno. By the time the emergency crew arrived, it was too late. The plant was shut down immediately. An investigation began, and the question rang out like an accusation. Why was a man who had been on the job for less than 5 days in one of the most dangerous areas of the plant? This wasn't the first time. Just a year earlier, another worker had died in a similar way in this very place. And now, another life cut short in the most brutal way imaginable. In blast furnaces like these, safety isn't just a rule. It's a matter of life and death. When you're under a sea of boiling metal, you have two choices: take the right step or never take the step at all. Accident in machinery. It was a hot afternoon at the Whitworth, Texas, sawmill. The air was thick with the smell of freshly cut pine, the hum of machinery, and the sweat on the faces of the workers. The machine stopped abruptly. Inside, the logs were jammed, blocking the entire production line. To free them, they reached for the heavy steel cable, looped through the gears. They pulled, jerked, adjusted, hoping to break the jam. But the more they pulled, the more the cable tightened, shaking like a giant bow about to snap. Then everything changed. A sharp, cold sound, like a knife blade, crack. The cable snapped. All the pent-up energy was released in an instant. It whipped through the air, fast as a bullet, sharp as a blade. The blow turned the entire construction site into hell.
Could you be any more lazy with the sound effects? As interesting as the story is, the other channel that I watched is from was it Boxhead? I I'd rather be watching his YouTube channel now instead of suffering the same sound effect over and over again. You gotta improve. You gotta improve your video. You gotta improve your production. I am sorry. You really gotta improve your production. I get it. You probably don't have the money to get all the sound. Use all the sound effects. Get all the sound effects you need. But you're gonna lose viewers real quick if you don't. If you don't put some variety in your video.
In a millisecond, 4 men standing nearby were slashed across the neck. The heads were separated from their bodies, and their bodies remained in the same working position for a few more seconds, before collapsing in absolute silence.
Okay, that. Did you not double check? Or are you using AI to make your scripts? Because from not only Box's video, but also once again, there's another video, there's another channel similar to Boxhead. But basically 3 of the workers were decapitated. One of them was launched quite a bit away and he ended up with a broken leg but survived.
The 5th person was thrown aside, his
I forgot there's 5 people.
leg bones shattered, blood splattered all over the floor. The scene was deathly silent. Sawdust, hard hats, and lifeless bodies were scattered. The remaining workers were stunned, unable to believe that their colleagues had just been wiped out in a single breath. When the rescue team arrived, all they could do was take one survivor with crippled legs to the hospital. The remaining 4 never returned home. The accident became a ghost that haunted the sawmill. Just one cable pulled too far, and 5 families were forever torn apart. In industrial plants, mistakes never happen twice. A small detail, a seemingly harmless wire, can also become a blade that takes a life in the blink of an eye. Construction site accident. It's 2019 in Bangkok, Thailand, and a 39-year-old construction worker.
2019. Yeah, they're using fucking AI. Nah, fuck you. Fuck you. You're using AI. That is fucking disrespectful. No, fuck you. Alright. Waiting for the video to load now. Oh, that was fucking mad disrespectful. Fucking using AI and now marking your video as fucking AI. Usually when you market videos AI on YouTube, AI on YouTube, you have to. It's usually referred to AI art, but AI voices also count, and they were using AI voice in their video and did not mark their video as AI. That's fucking. They're probably using AI in their production as well. So that's mad fucking no, hell no. Fuck you for that. Fuck you for that.
The car chasing. The car chase incident. In 2002, during the filming of a high-speed action scene, a stuntman prepared for a sequence that was supposed to look effortless on screen. The setup was meant to dazzle. He would parasail down a line, swoop cleanly over a bridge, and land on target while the cameras captured every second. On paper, it was just another daring stunt, but reality didn't follow the script. As the crew looked on, the approach came in too fast. Instead of clearing the bridge, his body slammed directly into the concrete at highway speed. The impact was so sudden that for a split second, some thought it was just part of the show. But after realizing that it wasn't, well, let's just say cameras captured something nobody wanted to see. And let's be real, no one's clapping for a stunt when the performer doesn't get up. Medics rushed to his side, but there was nothing left to do. The man who was meant to make the hero look untouchable had died instantly. His last stunt burned forever into the film reels. A scene that was supposed to thrill audiences had instead captured the exact moment of a performer paying the ultimate price. The high fall incident. This next situation takes place in 1986 on a lonely stretch of highway in Arizona. To the crew, it was just another blistering afternoon shoot. The sun was beating down, the asphalt shimmered like glass, and the desert around them buzzed with heat. Engines roared, tires screeched, and the cameras were lined up to capture a motorcycle chase that was supposed to look wild but controlled. Everyone figured it would be routine, just another day of stunts, smoke, and adrenaline. But, as it often does, things went nuts in a split second and no one saw it coming. One of the stuntmen, a veteran specialist famous for his high falls and ridiculous leaps, tore through the scene on his bike. He'd pulled off skyscraper drops, helicopter jumps, and free falls that made audiences gasp, so the setup today should have been easy by comparison. But as the motorcycle skidded slightly offline, the routine snapped apart. Instead of keeping to the road, the bike carried him straight into a cliff face. The impact was instant, violent, and final. His body was crushed before he even had a chance to react. For the people watching, the shock was hard to process. They'd seen him defy gravity more times than they could count, walking away from things no normal person should have survived. And yet, here he was, gone. Not from some towering stunt or elaborate setup, but from what should have been the simplest ride of his career. The desert was left quiet, except for the grim realization that this would be the last fall he'd ever take. The Western Incident. Out in California during the 1940s, a war film was being staged, complete with hundreds of extras, cavalry charges, clouds of smoke, and clashing steel. It was the kind of set where even the background actors looked like they'd stepped straight out of history. But for one man, just playing soldier wasn't enough. While the others swung lightweight props, he decided realism meant bringing a real cavalry sword to the field. When the cameras rolled, he galloped forward with the rest, his horse kicking up dust in the stage battlefield. But in an instant, everything went wrong. The horse reared violently, throwing him from the saddle, and instead of crashing harmlessly into dirt like countless stunt riders before him, he came down directly on the weapon he insisted on carrying. So yes, he achieved what he wanted, authenticity. Just maybe not the kind that keeps you around for the rap party. If he'd stuck with the rubber
Yeah.
sword like everyone else, he would have been brushing sand off his costume and heading to lunch. Instead, he became the first and last man on set to prove that method acting can kill you. The crew froze, unable to process what they'd seen. The battle around them was staged, but the blood wasn't. The motorcycle incident. Because apparently flying through downtown traffic at top speed without a helmet might just end well, a female stunt rider way back in 2017 was called in for a superhero movie, stepping into her very first big film job. The sequence looked routine on paper, which is basically a motorcycle weaving through city streets, cutting sharp turns, making it all look clean and effortless on screen. It was the kind of stunt audiences barely think about, but the performer behind the handlebars has no room for error. As the cameras rolled, she accelerated into the shot, leaned into the curve, and then lost it. The bike skidded, the tires failed to hold, and instead of straightening out, momentum carried her across the pavement and onto the sidewalk. In an instant, the machine launched forward like a missile, slamming her directly into the side of a building. There was no dramatic pause, no window for survival. Without protective gear, the impact was catastrophic. The crew rushed in, but the scene was already beyond saving. What should have been another take in the can had turned into the end of her life in front of dozens of horrified witnesses. The set fell silent. Actors who were used to resetting between explosions and fight sequences now stood in shock, realizing there was no reset for this. Production shut down immediately, but for the people who were there, no amount of time or edits could erase what they had just seen. On screen, the final cut of that chase scene looks seamless, fast, and exciting, exactly what audiences expect from a blockbuster. Off screen, it's remembered for something else entirely. The day a rider chasing her first big break never got the chance to take another. The helicopter crash. In 1982, during the filming of a movie sequence, a helicopter was brought in to hover low over a swampy set while massive explosions went off around it. The scene was meant to look chaotic and terrifying on screen, but off camera, things were even worse. On the ground, a man was carrying two children through the stage of chaos, running beneath the
I remember
aircraft
this.
as the pyrotechnics erupted all around them. It should have been a moment of movie spectacle, carefully rehearsed and safe. Instead, the explosions went off too close to the helicopter, rattling it in midair. The pilot lost control. Within seconds, the aircraft spun down, slamming into the actors below. All three people were killed instantly, their deaths captured on film in one of the darkest accidents the industry has ever seen. The stunt had crossed the line from controlled danger to outright disaster, and the entire production was thrown into chaos. The aftermath dragged on for years. Lawsuits piled up, criminal charges were filed, and the story dominated headlines as the public realized how recklessly the scene had been staged. Hollywood had to face uncomfortable questions about its safety standards, especially when children were involved. From then on, stunt work and pyrotechnics were put under a harsher spotlight. But the legacy of the crash has never gone away. That movie is remembered for the fact that it became the stage for a tragedy no one should have allowed to have happened in the first place. And really, if you ever wanted to know how far filmmakers will go for a shot, well, blowing up a helicopter over children pretty much answers that. The chopper blade incident. This one happened during a helicopter stunt. The setup had cameras rolling, crew standing by, and a performer tethered dangerously close to the spinning aircraft. But one wrong movement, one slip in the choreography, and the performer was dragged directly into the rotor blades. He wrapped up the day heading home, kicking back with dinner, maybe even zoning out in front of the TV. Well, that's what could have happened if he hadn't been pulled straight into the helicopter blade. The impact was instant, because as we know, bodies don't stand a chance against steel blades rotating faster than the eye can follow. Crew members nearby were showered with debris, left frozen in shock at what they had just witnessed. It was a gruesome incident that left everyone unable to unsee it. This wasn't the kind of accident you could chalk up to a freak mishap or just part of the risk. It was catastrophic, brutal, and absolute. The sort of ending that doesn't just claim a life, but permanently scars everyone there to witness it. When people talk about stunts that went too far, this is the nightmare scenario that gets whispered about. Not because it's legendary, but because it's the kind of horror that makes you question why anyone would even try to risk danger this close to a spinning blade in the first place. If you made it this far, you've just heard some of the strangest and grisliest stunt deaths ever. That's all I've got for now, so maybe skip the real swords, stick to the prop.
Yeah.
Okay, Gen Z.
Here we go. All right. Oh, that crack. All right, let's continue.
Okay, Gen Z, you are officially the ballsiest generation ever. And I, as your millennial defense lawyer, could not be more proud. Hundreds of people marched over the weekend towards the seat of the government in central Lima under a heavy police presence. Groups of young people threw stones, petrol bombs, and fireworks at law enforcement, who responded with tear gas and rubber bullets. So, what caused them to do this? Well, quite a laughably simple reason, actually. They're adamantly refusing, rightfully so I might add, to pay the welfare pension benefits of the old boomers who screwed over the economy and their futures. Social unrest has increased since the 𝙂𝙚𝙣𝙚 government passed a law on September 5th requiring young people to contribute to private pension funds despite job insecurity and an unofficial employment rate of over 70%. We are marching against corruption for life and against the crime that is killing us every day. 28-year-old Adriana Flores told AFP. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, we're seeing a very similar situation play out in Morocco. Morocco is actually a very beautiful country. I've actually been there myself during my travels. Beautiful beaches, sceneries, and Assassin's Creed-esque architecture. And it's an incredible tragedy that its people are forced to live in abject poverty. I often saw little school children, as young as 5 or 6, running around the streets asking for money there. Despite all these problems, however, the government has decided they'd rather spend $35 billion on the 2030 World Cup instead of, maybe actually improving healthcare, education, and public services its own citizens so desperately need. In a way, this kind of reminds me of exactly what's going on with American colleges. For decades, tuition costs have skyrocketed absolutely out of this universe. College has become totally unaffordable and useless for most young people. And yet, they'd rather invest millions into college football stadiums and the salaries of head coaches. And I couldn't be more proud of Gen Z right now, fighting back against these corrupt governments and bankrupting these useless colleges, giving out useless degrees. Now, of course, this was all initially inspired by the violent, bloodthirsty Gen Z protest in Nepal, which ultimately ended up being successful. After a week of relentless protests, the corrupt boomer government got thrown out and Gen Z elected their own new president through Discord. Yes, you heard that right, Discord. This literally has to be the most Gen Z thing ever. A funny meme that paradoxically also has the power to topple entire governments and start revolutions. This was the first domino that tipped over and ignited a global Gen Z revolution that might just go down in history books as the moment that changed our futures forever. This summer to take down the biggest human being who hates Gen Z so much he even celebrates them dying. Thanks to you, we've gained a subscribe. If you're new here, your help weaken athletes running a 4-minute mile is nothing. Not 2-minute athletes this as if human evolution just magically took a huge leap forward in 1954. It was simply that we saw the first person break 4 minutes, the mental block was removed, and we all realized it wasn't that impossible at all. And I believe we are seeing the beginning stages of the exact same scenario play out in the global, worldwide Gen Z protests going on right now. Nepal was our Roger Bannister, our first real-life example where we actually saw young people rise up and force meaningful change successfully. Then we saw similar protests erupt all over Nepal and other parts of Southeast Asia like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And now these protests have spread like wildfire all the way to Peru and Morocco, across continents, oceans, and cultures. And now the big question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind right now, could this happen in the West? Because that would be a true watershed moment. That would be the epitome of Gen Z. But before we explore that possibility, however, there is one major issue I feel compelled to speak out about with the platform I have. During the Gen Z protest in Morocco, a policeman responded to the protesters by literally ramming into and running over the protesters as if he was just playing GTA. Now, beyond being incredibly deadly and dangerous, this is just straight up unacceptable, inexcusable behavior coming from a country that is set to host the World Cup. I don't have the biggest platform in the world by any means, but I do have something, and I'm going to do my best to call this out and expose it. We need to do everything we can to boycott this event and send a clear message. The World Cup is one of the most prestigious and popular sporting events in the world. Hosting the World Cup is a privilege and not a right. Whichever country hosts the World Cup always gets the privilege of receiving a huge boost to their economy and their international image. And it's simply unacceptable for the hired state police in that country to use vehicular homicide as a way to resolve conflicts. So I encourage all of you to share this video, spread this message across social media and in real life, and hold the Moroccan government accountable for their actions. Gen Z in Nepal, Peru, and Morocco have shown us that meaningful change is indeed possible if enough of us are willing to stand up. And with how much they've risked their lives rebelling against their governments, the least we could do to support them is by exposing these horrific, unacceptable acts and boycotting the World Cup in 2030 as much as humanly possible. Part 2. Could this happen in the West? So now it's time to address the elephant in the room. Is this something we could possibly see happen in the West as well? Well, it's definitely possible. Those who want to write it off as being totally impossible and hyperbolic are just completely ignorant of history. Anytime inequality has shot up to these obscene levels, revolutions have often followed. There is one key difference, however, between the situation in Southeast Asia and here in the West. In every Southeast Asian country that has produced a successful revolution, the protesters were completely and totally unified across political lines and parties. Here in the West, however, the elites have done a great job at separating us and pitting us against each other, dividing and conquering. Black versus white, men versus women, left versus right, etc. And because of that, personally, I think a civil war is much more likely than an all-out revolution. But as interesting as this all sounds, none of these, in my opinion, are the best solution. Sure, it can feel incredibly empowering and interesting to start a revolution, but we have to remember that there are real-life physical consequences for this. This was a very level-headed comment that I read that, in my opinion, best represents the best approach going forward. We live in the wealthier parts of the world, should pay close attention. These nations' youths got fed up because they felt trapped in a way our youth doesn't yet. Don't quite agree with that part. I think that part, our youth are definitely feeling that. But the frustrated sentiment that old, out-of-touch politicians don't care about the youth, the future, and flaunt the unfairness of the system in their face, that sentiment exists here too. But we have the opportunity to still address these issues without massive violence for now. And we should simply do that because the economic cost of gradual peaceful reform is so much cheaper than going through revolutions. And he's absolutely right about this. 74 people died and 2,000 more got injured in the Gen Z Nepal protest. Now, you might look at the end result and say the ends justify the means, but it's important we remember that these are not just numbers on a paper here. These are real human beings with families and loved ones. Would you simply look at it as 74 deaths if one of them was your friend, your family member, or even yourself? Now, of course, I'm not going to sit up here and be an idealist about this either. I'm not going to sit up here and lecture you about how
people are
violence is
racing
never the
down
answer.
the street.
The cold hard truth, when you look at history, is
I
that
hate
sometimes
that. People do
violence,
that.
unfortunately, is the answer. But it should always be the last answer and the last resort. And as this comment said, right now, we do still have the opportunity to fix it before it gets too out of hand and one of us gets seriously hurt or worse. So, what's the solution? Alright, so you've heard me criticize the right and capitalism a lot in all my videos, but for this video, I'm going to switch gears a bit and call out the left. As we mentioned earlier, the main reason these Gen Z uprisings have been successful in other countries is because they're all collectively unified against the government elites who are actually the real problem. And the reason it's not happening in the West is because the political elite have successfully pitted us against each other, and I absolutely blame the left more for this than the right. You see, I do actually agree with a lot of the premises of the left. I do actually believe women and minorities do face serious challenges and unfair disadvantages. But so does everyone, and young guys in general. And when the economy just sucks this damn bad for everyone across the board, it is just incredibly snobby and elitist to lecture young men about their privilege. If we were all making a decent wage and decent living, we would definitely be more sympathetic to the plight of women and minorities. But when young men are barely making enough to pay rent themselves, and you tell them they should give up the already very little money they're making because they're quote-unquote privileged, of course they're just going to tell you to screw yourself, and rightfully so. And it's not just incredibly out of touch, it's downright factually incorrect as well. Young Gen Z and millennial men today were born way after the patriarchal oppression of women era. If you want to blame anyone for the plight of women and minorities, you can definitely blame older generations of men, and I'm not even talking about the boomers here. I'm talking about older men generations from the Roman Empire until now. But Gen Z and millennial men had nothing to do with any of that. There's a lot of talk about how Gen Z men have become incredibly conservative and brainwashed by the far right, and while I agree with this assessment, their diagnosis of the problem is completely incorrect. The reason young men have gone so far to the right is because they've been completely antagonized and demonized by the left. And since we unfortunately live in a two-party system, there's just no other place to go to than to the right. This is why so many young men are overwhelmingly capitalist, even though capitalism is the very system that's specifically screwing them over the most. Under capitalism, they've been exploited by corporations for dogshit wages. They've been forced to become wage slaves for unbearable boomer bosses. They've entered an impossible housing market where, let's face it, they're just never going to own a house because boomers bought up 5 vacation properties each in the 60s when it was way more affordable to do so. And now they use houses as a capitalist speculative asset for profits rather than what it actually should be, which is, you know, a place to actually live in. You have to really antagonize the living crap out of them for them to get to a point where they'd literally rather have capitalism than deal with your BS. And for you young guys out there watching who are pro-capitalist, I just want to say, I know we've argued and debated capitalism a lot throughout the videos. And I want to say that although I vehemently disagree with you about capitalism, I've been there, I get it, and I see you. As bad as it may be, whatever the left is offering you is way worse. The bottom line is this: whether we have a violent revolution or, in my opinion, the more preferable solution, a peaceful and productive reform, the only way real change can happen is if we're all united against the real enemies here, and not against each other. This is why the Gen Z revolutions around the world have been so successful, and why we should all be taking notes here in the West on exactly how they did this. Whether it's about violent revolutions or quitting soulless BS 9-to-5 jobs, it really feels as if Gen Z is literally the only generation with any sort of balls, and we explore this more in this video right here. Check it out. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Today we will be looking.
Damn.
Today we will be looking at 2 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. As always,
All right. Ooh. Neck crack. All right. Okay. All right.
today we will be looking at 2 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. As always, viewer discretion is advised. July 15th, 1995. The morning sun beat down on the Florida landscape as 2 experienced cave divers prepared for what should have been a routine technical dive into Thunderhole Cave. Robert 𝙂𝙗 and 𝙂𝙚 had planned this dive meticulously over the previous weeks, studying maps of the underwater cave system and calculating their gas requirements with precision. The dive plan called for mixed gas diving, a sophisticated technique that uses different nitrogen and oxygen mixtures at various depths to extend bottom time and reduce decompression requirements. 2 separate breathing mixtures had been prepared with laboratory precision. A standard nitrox blend for the deeper portions of the dive and a 50-50 mix, 50% oxygen and 50% nitrogen, intended exclusively for shallower depths during the decompression phase. The tanks were labeled with their gas contents clearly marked on white tape wrapped around each cylinder. 𝙂𝙗 had taken several Sudafed tablets before arriving at the dive site that morning. His sinuses had been bothering him for days, and the decongestant was meant to help him equalize pressure during descent, a common practice among divers dealing with congestion. The water at Thunderhole's entrance was cool and inviting. The cave system was well known among Florida's technical diving community, a challenging environment that demanded respect, proper procedures, and unwavering attention to detail. 𝙂𝙗 and 𝙂𝙚 entered the water together shortly after 10 in the morning. The descent began smoothly through crystal clear water. The divers dropped through the water column at a controlled rate. Visibility was excellent that day, perhaps 100 feet or more, and the familiar formations guided them deeper into the system. At 70 feet, approximately 21 meters below the surface, they reached their first planned waypoint. The cave passage opened into a larger room here, a natural gathering point that many divers used as a staging area. This was where 𝙂𝙗 should have switched to his deeper mix and secured the 50-50 tank at this depth for later use during decompression. The 50-50 mixture with its high oxygen content was perfect for shallow stops between 20 and 70 feet, where it would accelerate nitrogen elimination from body tissues without creating oxygen toxicity. Standard procedure called for leaving this tank here, marked with a light or line, ready for pickup on the return journey. But somehow, in the routine of the dive and the distraction of the stunning cave environment, the switch never happened correctly. Perhaps 𝙂𝙗 became disoriented in the moment, or maybe the Sudafed was affecting his mental clarity more than he realized. Whatever the reason, he continued his descent with the wrong tank, carrying the 50-50 mix deeper into the cave system, while the appropriate deeper mixture, the one designed for high-pressure depths, remained clipped to his harness, unused or perhaps left behind at 70 feet, waiting uselessly for a diver who had already passed it by. 𝙂𝙚, swimming nearby in the crystal-clear water, had no reason to question his partner's gas management. Each diver was responsible for their own gas selection and switching procedures. The buddy system in technical diving assumes that each diver maintains their own protocols while providing backup for emergencies. There was no way for 𝙂𝙚 to know that 𝙂𝙗 was breathing the wrong mixture as they descended together.
That sounds like a dangerous accident
continued
waiting to
downward
happen.
through increasingly narrow passages. The cave walls closed in around them as they followed the natural contours of the limestone. The pressure increased steadily with every meter of descent, squeezing their wetsuits tighter against their bodies and compressing the air in their tanks. At 140 feet, nearly 43 meters below the surface, they reached their planned maximum depth. The cave passage here was spectacular, a tunnel carved by ancient underground rivers that had long since vanished. The temperature had dropped noticeably, and the pressure at this depth was approximately 5.3 atmospheres, more than 5 times the pressure at sea level. Every gas breathed at this depth was compressed to that same pressure, including the oxygen molecules flowing into McQuarrie's lungs with each breath. His regulator delivered the 50-50 mix smoothly, the breathing resistance normal for this depth. Nothing felt wrong. There was no warning sign, no...
The fact there's no warning sign, that's fucking shit. Oof. That's scary. That is genuinely scary.
No unusual sensation to alert him that every breath was bringing him closer to disaster. The 50-50 mix that was safe and even beneficial at 70 feet had become a deadly poison at 140 feet. The partial pressure of oxygen in his breathing gas had climbed far beyond safe limits, reaching levels that would cause oxygen toxicity, a condition where oxygen itself becomes toxic to the human central nervous system. That's because at 70 feet, the oxygen partial pressure in the 50-50 mix was manageable, approximately 1.6 atmospheres, right at the edge of accepted limits for technical diving. But at 140 feet, that same mixture created an oxygen partial pressure exceeding 2.6 atmospheres, well into the danger zone, where oxygen attacks the brain and nervous system like a poison. Oxygen toxicity is one of diving's most insidious dangers. The body's tissues, particularly the brain and nervous system, react violently to excessive oxygen pressure. Brain cells begin firing erratically, overwhelmed by the chemical imbalance. There are rarely any warning signs, no gradual onset of symptoms, no tingling or strange sensations, no time to recognize the danger and respond appropriately. McQuarrie and Moats spent approximately 15 minutes at maximum depth, exploring the passage and checking their dive computers regularly. Everything seemed normal. Both divers' lights played across the cave walls as they made mental notes of the features they would report to other divers later. Then they began the long ascent. This was when the dive plan called for careful decompression stops at various depths, allowing dissolved nitrogen to safely leave their tissues without forming dangerous bubbles in their bloodstream. The ascent proceeded according to plan initially, both divers rising slowly through the water column while controlling their buoyancy precisely. They rose through the water, making their required stops at predetermined depths. At each stop, they hovered motionless in the water for the calculated time, watching their dive computers count down the minutes. As they approached shallower depths, the oxygen partial pressure in McQuarrie's breathing gas was decreasing as the surrounding pressure decreased, but the damage may have already been done during the time at maximum depth. They were somewhere around 70 feet, perhaps beginning their decompression sequence, when everything went catastrophically wrong. Without any warning whatsoever, McQuarrie's body went completely rigid in the water. His regulator fell from his mouth as violent convulsions seized his entire frame. His arms jerked wildly in uncontrolled spasms. His legs kicked in random directions, and bubbles exploded from his mouth as water rushed in to fill his lungs. The oxygen toxicity had triggered a grand mal seizure, the most feared and most deadly consequence of breathing too much oxygen under pressure. Moats spun around at the sudden commotion, his light catching his friend's convulsing body. Horror and disbelief flooded through him as he watched McQuarrie thrashing uncontrollably in the water. He lunged forward immediately, reaching for his friend, trying desperately to stabilize him and get the regulator back into his mouth. But oxygen toxicity seizures are nearly impossible to manage underwater. The violent convulsions made it impossible for McQuarrie to hold anything, including his regulator. His jaw was clenched tight, then slack, then clenching again in rapid succession. Water flooded into McQuarrie's lungs with each involuntary gasp. His body was completely beyond his control, every muscle firing at random as his nervous system short-circuited under the toxic effects of too much oxygen. Moats struggled desperately, fighting against his friend's thrashing limbs, trying to force the regulator back in, trying somehow to reverse what was happening before his eyes. But some things cannot be stopped once they begin. The convulsions continued for what seemed like an eternity, but was probably less than a minute. McQuarrie's movements gradually weakened as his lungs filled with water and oxygen deprivation claimed his brain. Moats held his friend's body, still trying futilely to help, even as he knew it was already too late. The thrashing stopped. 𝙂𝙗 went limp in the water, his body now just dead weight in Moats' arms. There were no other divers present in the cave system that day. No one waited on the surface providing backup support or monitoring dive times. The two men had entered Thunderhole alone, following a practice that was common but always risky. Now, Moats faced the nightmare scenario every dive buddy fears. His partner was dead, and he was alone at depth with his own decompression obligations still unfulfilled. Moats had to make an impossible choice. He could not bring 𝙂𝙗's body up immediately without risking his own life to decompression sickness. He secured his friend's body as best he could and completed his own decompression stops, each minute an agony of grief and shock. When he finally surfaced hours later, alone and devastated, the full weight of what had happened crashed down on him. His friend had died from a simple mistake. The wrong tank at the wrong depth. The 50-50 mix that should have been left at 70 feet had traveled to 140 feet, and the oxygen that gives life had become the poison that took it. The unmarked depth limits, the Sudafed tablets, the moment of confusion that led to the fatal gas selection, all of it combined into a tragedy that could never be undone. On January 5th, 2023, an experienced diver descended into the waters off the coast of Mexico for what should have been a routine day of harvesting shellfish. 𝙬𝙬 Bay sits along the coast of Sonora, Mexico, in the Gulf of California, a body of water that's sometimes called the aquarium of the world because of its incredible marine biodiversity. The waters here are rich with sea life, from tiny plankton to massive whales, and everything in between. For local fishermen, these waters represent their livelihood, providing abundant catches of fish, shellfish, and other valuable marine resources. Manuel 𝙂𝙚 Lopez was 53 years old in January 2023, and he was about as experienced as divers get in this part of Mexico. He had spent decades working these waters, diving to depths that would make most recreational divers uncomfortable, and harvesting various species of shellfish that were prized in local and international markets. Lopez wasn't some weekend hobbyist. He was a professional who understood the ocean, respected its dangers, and had survived countless dives without serious incident. On this particular morning, Lopez was part of a small crew that had set out to harvest 𝙂𝙤𝙧𝙖𝙩, axe scallops, a valuable mollusk that's commonly collected throughout the Gulf of California. These scallops live on the seafloor at significant depths. Lopez was using a surface-supplied air system for this dive, which is significantly different from the scuba tanks that most people are familiar with. Instead of carrying compressed air on his back, Lopez was connected to the surface vessel by a long air hose that provided him with a continuous supply of breathing gas. This system allowed him to stay underwater for extended periods without worrying about running out of air. He could work for hours at a time, as long as the compressor on the boat kept running. The plan for the day was straightforward. Lopez would descend to the seafloor, somewhere between 11
I'm
and
guessing
18
compressor
meters,
failed.
36 to 59 feet, deep, and systematically harvest the axe scallops he found. His companions would remain on the support vessel above, managing his air supply, monitoring his progress through the air hose, and helping him load his harvest when he surfaced. As Lopez descended that morning, the water conditions were less than ideal. The visibility was relatively murky, not terrible, but not the crystal clear water that makes diving pleasant and safe. In murky water, it's harder to see potential dangers approaching, but he kept on descending towards his goal. Eventually, he was able to reach towards his destination. Lopez was working near the seafloor, moving among schools of fish as he searched for scallops to harvest. He was wearing a black wetsuit, standard equipment for divers working in these waters, and his movements through the water created vibrations and disturbances that any nearby predators could detect from considerable distances. What Lopez and his crew didn't know was that they weren't alone in 𝙬𝙬 Bay that morning. Somewhere in the murky waters below, a massive great white shark was cruising through the area. This particular shark was enormous, estimated to be about 6 meters or 19 feet long, which is close to the maximum size that great white sharks typically reach. To put that in perspective, A 19-foot great white shark weighs somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 pounds and has a mouth full of serrated teeth that can exert bite forces of up to 4,000 pounds per square inch. These are apex predators that have been perfecting their hunting techniques for millions of years, and they're capable of killing large prey with a single bite. What happened next occurred so quickly that Lopez probably never knew what hit him. The great white shark attacked with the explosive speed and power that makes these predators so terrifying. Great whites don't slowly swallow their prey like in the movies. When they attack, they come from below at incredible velocity, using the element of surprise to ensure their prey has no chance to escape or defend itself. The shark struck Lopez with immense force, its jaws closing around his upper body in a single, catastrophic bite. The impact was so violent and the bite so powerful that it instantly decapitated Lopez and inflicted massive trauma to his shoulders and upper torso. This wasn't a test bite or an exploratory nibble. This was a full predatory strike from one of the ocean's most powerful predators. The crew members on the support vessel above had no warning that anything was wrong. One moment they were monitoring Lopez's dive through the air hose, and the next moment they felt unusual tension or movement in the line. They immediately began pulling Lopez back to the surface, probably thinking he had encountered some problem with his equipment or had gotten tangled in something on the seafloor. When they pulled Lopez's body to the surface, the scene that greeted them was something out of a nightmare. Their experienced colleague and friend had been essentially destroyed by the shark attack. The decapitation and massive injuries to his upper body made it immediately clear that he was dead, and that his death had been instantaneous. The entire attack had unfolded in a matter of seconds. From the moment the shark struck to the moment Lopez died was probably less than 5 seconds, possibly even less than 2 seconds. There was no prolonged struggle, no opportunity to fight back or escape. The great white shark had done what millions of years of evolution had designed it to do: identify prey, attack with overwhelming force, and kill instantly. The witnesses were unable to react or intervene because the entire event happened so quickly and so deep below the surface. By the time they pulled Lopez up, there was nothing that could be done to save him. The trauma was so severe that even if medical personnel had been standing by, Lopez's injuries were instantly fatal. Marine biologists and shark experts who investigated the incident later confirmed that Lopez's injuries were consistent with a single predatory bite from a large great white shark. This is actually relatively rare. Most shark attacks on humans are cases of mistaken identity where the shark takes a single exploratory bite and then leaves. But in this case, the shark's bite was so powerful and so well placed that a single strike was sufficient to cause fatal injuries. The experts noted several factors that likely contributed to the attack. Here's where the tragic circumstances of this attack become clear. From below, Lopez would have presented a very specific silhouette against the lighter water above, a dark, roughly seal-shaped object, moving through the water in an area where the great white shark was hunting. Sea lions are one of the great white's preferred prey species in this region, and sharks have evolved to recognize and target that particular shape and movement pattern. Second, the murky water conditions that morning would have made it difficult for the shark to distinguish between a human diver and its natural prey until it was too close to abort the attack. Third, Lopez's surface-supplied air system meant he was tethered to the boat above, potentially creating vibrations or movements in the water that could attract predatory attention. Marine biologists noted that there had been reports of increased shark presence in the area, possibly linked to seasonal migrations and warmer water temperatures that were affecting marine animal distributions throughout the Gulf of California. The incident sparked renewed discussions about diver safety in the Gulf of California and the need for better understanding of shark behavior and distribution patterns in Mexican waters. Some experts suggested that divers working in areas with known shark populations should consider using shark deterrent devices, working in groups for mutual protection, or avoiding areas where sharks have been recently sighted. For Lopez's family, the loss was devastating. He was an experienced professional who had spent his entire adult life working in these waters without serious incident. He understood the risks of his profession and took appropriate precautions. But sometimes, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, when a large predator mistakes you for its natural prey, is a risk that no amount of experience or precaution can completely eliminate.
Yeah. Also, you can be as prepared as you can physically can be, and still be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Alright. Just temporarily. Jim. Alright. I'm gonna save state for this. Save it. Yeah. Hello. Hey Toxify, how are you? Yeah, I was in the middle of saving, making a save point for my art. How are you? Doing well? Ooh, food theorist.
Arby's has the meats, but nobody's eating them. What if I told you, though, that it's one of the best-selling fast food chains in the country? Billions of dollars in revenue in the last year alone. But this highly successful chain is making a Arby's has the meat.
Come on. There we go.
Arby's has the meats, but nobody's eating them. What if I told you, though, that it's one of the best-selling fast food chains in the country? Billions of dollars in revenue in the last year alone. But this highly...
And my third, oh yeah. This could be, as you can tell by the title of the stream, this is my third character design challenge. And this time it's more of a cyberpunk. I'm going for a cyberpunky Viking digital warrior kind of thing. It's kind of a mix of let's see here. What was it again? Like World of Warcraft, Sword Art Online, and I guess Meta Runner as well. I'm not exactly sure, but also Cyberpunk is gonna be a major factor for this design. Let's see here. I got kind of just finished up the rough line art for this. I probably want to make the actual Alright, I want to make this up there. Ew, I think I see mistake. Oh, come on, you fucking stupid ass ant! Fucking hell! I can't trust this phone for shit. Anyway, what was I doing? Alright. Yeah, that's a mistake I made. Fuck me on that. Alright, and then right line. Alright. I kind of want to know what to do. It's kind of like the weaponry is gonna be shield. Like an overall aesthetic, overall design challenge for this one. Character archetype. I should say character class is hunter. Their talent or their skill is computer coding. The personality trait is impatient. And the hair color is gonna be light pink. Eye color is gonna be dark magenta, but I'm gonna switch that to like pastel colors, kind of thing. But yeah, I think what I want to do for the torso, better for the torso here, can be alright. Teardrops. 2. It's gonna be 1. Two. Alright, and then alright, here we go. eraser can be. Yeah. Eraser. Yeah. All right. All right. More like it. So I'm kind of doing just the rough line art for this before doing the actual line art. But I am going to be ending off stream soon. But still, thank you very much for stopping by. Oh, fucking hell. All right. It kind of does it for the rough line art here. Yeah, because I do have it labeled here. This is rough line art. This folder for this. And then there's rough draft here. There's gonna be added clothes later on. Right now it's kind of like a blank figure. No color, nothing sort. Anywho. I say this is a pretty successful art practice session here. Anywho. Alright. Hold on, well, I can't believe everything set up. Name on the main here. Please. Alright. Oh, fuck me. Alright. Alright. There we go. Well, chat, I am gonna end off today's stream here. I want to say thank you everyone for joining today's stream. I'm excited to see how this character design turns out, and just pretty much learn more how to do posing and like anatomy and whatnot. And that being said, I want to say just thank you everyone for joining today's stream. My name is 𝙂𝙚𝙣𝙚. I'm a variety streamer. I stream lots of video games, chat suggests me, as well as I draw art, I do programming, and hopefully sooner or later I'll be able to stream 3D modeling to everyone here. That being said, I'm just gonna probably just relax, just watch YouTube and whatnot. But with that being said, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining today's stream again, and thank you for everyone for watching today's YouTube VOD. My name is 𝙂𝙚𝙣𝙚. I might as well just be everyone's virtual, everyone's B-mom. No, it's B-mom or B-mama, whatever, or whatnot. That's pretty much that's been generally the vibe that's going on for like the past week or so. Anywho, honestly, I love everyone here. I love all my blitzies, and I hope journey to become not only most self-sufficient indie VTuber, but also just be able to create what I want on demand. Like I said, I gotta. Like I said, everyone, just make sure you hydrate, make sure you eat, and make sure you're eating well, and also make sure you use the restroom because I know you haven't used the restroom for about 6 hours now. Like I said, I gotta get going now, Blitzies. Bye bye, matinee.